and delicious snacks have in common?
Hi, I'm Jack McNamara, and I love stunning and rare coins. Oh, and I also love delicious and scrumptious food, too. Join me as I combine the best of numismatics and tasty treats into one show. Coin Snacks with Jack. Put down that tired bologna sandwich and spice up your lunch as I chat with some of the biggest names in numismatics and eat delicious snacks. From coin news and U.S. Mint releases to rare coins and numismatic oddities. From my all-time favorite coins to ancients and commemoratives, get your numismatic midweek pick-me-up with Coin Snacks with Jack. Plus, we'll eat snacks, lots of them.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Coin Snacks with Jack. I'm your host, Jack McNamara, and I wish I was at the all-you-can-eat right field pavilion at Dodger Stadium right now, but I'm not. But I will have some snacks. I don't think it's Dodger dogs today, but it's looks like it's gonna be close actually. But anyway, I will easily take being here with all of you for another thrilling episode of Coin Snacks with Jack, which you can watch on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Now, before we get into things, we always talk a little bit about the news. And for our news this week, this is from a couple weeks back, but I thought you would all be very interested to hear this. This is big news, and it's going to relate to our show today. The first card graded by NGC's sibling company, CSG, sold on March 11th for over $98,000. This is a number 111 LeBron James rookie card, which was from 2003, and it was graded an almost perfect grade of 9.5 out of 10. And to hold this card's pedigree as the first card to be graded by CSG, they actually indicated it right on the label, first card graded. And depicted on this card, of course, is LeBron James, and he's shooting over Ben Wallace. And with only a 1 in 1,980 chance of pulling one of these cards out of a pack, finding one is incredibly rare, especially since this pack is now 18 years old. So good luck even finding a pack, let alone pulling a LeBron James rookie out of it. And I mean, this is just indicative. The recent surge in sports collectibles has analysts saying that the value of this card, could increase over time. It's expected to. And it's just been hotter than a pistol right now. All collectibles, but coins, but especially sports has been pretty wild ride lately. So we're going to hear a bit more about that with our guests today. But first, I want to say thank you to everyone that puts this show together every week. We have Chris, Joey, Sofer, Colleen, Nate, Elliot, Alex. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Now, before I reveal our guest, I want to talk about Jack's lunch special, which will be available on our website until 3 p.m. Pacific time. We're offering up to 27% off of all of our baseball and basketball Hall of Fame coins. And they're signed by iconic athletes, including Jerry West, Tony La Russa. So make sure to check those specials out. There's no code necessary. Just go to our website, rarecollectiblestv.com. Now, in case you couldn't figure it out by all my sports references earlier, today's guest is not a numismatist per se, but he is an expert in a variety of sports trading cards. He's been a professional at grading cards for over 2 decades. He specializes in vintage pre-World War II cards. He's handled some of the rarest baseball cards ever to be printed. Today we have grading finalizer for Certified Sports Guarantee, Andy Broome. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
Hey. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sure. How you doing today?
Doing great.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you'll be more great in a minute once we get our snacks. So before we dive in here, we do have a lot to talk about. But it wouldn't be Coin Snacks with Jack without a snack. So I'd like to quickly bring out Colleen to tell us about our snack for the day.
Okay, Jack. Well, since you have Andy Broome on the show today, and it's March Madness, and we're deep into the NBA season, and now baseball is starting, and we're all home, watching sports from our living rooms and our couches, I thought we should have nachos.
Yeah.
So we have nachos here. We have salsa, sour cream as your toppings. Nachos actually started back in the 1940s, but boy, have they come a long way. So with that,
Those ones aren't from the 40s, right?
these are not from the 40s.
Okay, good.
These are fresh. These are fresh and just delivered for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Andy specializes in pre-World War II nachos.
You know, I don't know. You know, the grilled cheese, I know they hung on to that for a decade. I'm not sure nachos could hang in there that long. So anyway, I hope you enjoy, and
I'm sure we
And
will.
here we
Anything
go.
with that much cheese on it is awesome in my book. There's no complaints here.
I mean, really, what could be more satisfying than crispy, salty tortilla chips, melted cheese, and jalapenos? All right, enjoy, Jack.
Thank you so much. And you know, before we came on the air live here, I did confer, and Andy did tell me that yes, greasy cheese is great for grading sports cards. It's the best thing you can do for your rare sports cards.
I guess next to only KFC.
Right, exactly. So, all right, let's get right into it here. So Andy, you work as a grading finalizer at CSG, which is a sibling of NGC, who we have a really great relationship with here at RCTV. Can you just tell our viewers a little bit about CSG?
Sure. Well, CSG, Certified Sports Guarantee, we specialize in grading sports cards only. We grade cards going back to the 1880s all the way up into present day and cards that are being released right now. We specialize only in the sports cards. Other types of trading cards like Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and what we traditionally call non-sports cards are handled by another one of our sister companies is CGC Trading Cards. But for us guys, we stick to just sports.
All right, and you said you give wedgies to those guys, right?
When they're needed, yes.
Awesome.
Keep them in line.
I'm sure when we have them on here, they're going to tell us the same thing about you guys, so it's all good.
No, I'm sure they'll have something to say.
So, and also as we go here, I may start opening stuff. I bought some packs and stuff. I came prepared.
Nice.
So we'll get into that a little too. But a lot of our viewers, they know about coin grading. They've been collecting certified coins for a while, NGC graded coins, but they're probably not as familiar with sports card grading. Although in today's world, with all the news about these record prices, they're probably starting to become more aware of it. But from what I understand, and I've been kind of trying to learn it a little myself how to grade cards. It is kind of a parallel thing. I think they probably are a lot more similar than people would imagine. Could you kind of give us a little explanation about the criteria and the process of how you'd grade a sports card?
Sure. Well, for sports cards, there's really four major what we call subgrades or areas that we look at when we're grading a card. And those areas are centering, corners, edges, and the card surface. And centering is the image of on the card, the devices such as logos and whatnot, how they line up. What was the manufacturer's intent for the centering on the card, as opposed to what the card actually is once it's been printed. Quality control can affect the centering grade. Corners where we're looking for wear, whether it's from manufacturer defects or actual wear from a card's been handled. Edges, similar to corners, we're looking at defects and wear patterns on the edges of the card. And then the surface, surface can be anything from print flaws from the printing process to creases, other types of damage. You get into the vintage cards, it's not uncommon to find pre-war cards with pinholes in them where they were put up on somebody's cork board at one time.
Right.
But those are the four major areas we're looking at when grading a card.
Yeah, like when I was a kid, I always remembered kind of looking at the corners, but I never really paid attention to centering. I know that's huge, especially when you get to the highest grades. I never really thought about surfaces. And I see from like cards my dad has in a cigar box, they'd flip them and whoever got closest to the
Right.
wall would win the cards, or they'd put them in their spokes. And then when I was a kid, I remember the big problem was, we just rubber band them together, so they all have those divots in the middle where you'd have the rubber bands around them. So a lot of
Sure,
issues
yeah.
that can happen to these cards. Now, as a collector and dealer of coins, we know how important it is. Third-party grading has been kind of hugely accepted in numismatics for now, a few decades, and it seems like in sports cards it's a little newer of a phenomenon, but it's so important. So, why do you think third-party grading is such a valuable asset for collectors of anything, really?
Yeah, the original intent for third-party grading in the card world was to be that unbiased third party in card transactions. Before the internet, there were dealers who would do mail order. They would do mail order auctions or sell through catalogs. And what one dealer would call mint or near mint, another dealer would call something completely different. So that was the original intent for, which is similar in coins, of course.
Right.
But as things have progressed, values have increased. Where there's money to be made, there's fraud and greed in anything. Right. And so third-party grading for cards, it's really now become more important. The grade is one thing, but the authentication of the card and looking for alterations to cards, that's become as important, if not more important, really, than the grade.
Yeah, I was going to say that the grade is obviously hugely important, but authentication today with the advent of laser printers and stuff. I mean, somebody could probably make a pretty decent fake at home these days. It's not that hard to imagine. So.
But that's true. That's definitely happening. I see that every day. But it's also bigger entities and getting involved on a professional level. We're seeing cards coming out from different parts of the world that are. It's scary how close they are. And this isn't your traditional, Topps cards that you and I collected when we were younger, just cardboard stock. You're talking about the basketball insert cards that have, plastic coatings and whatnot, and plastic stock. And these are what you would think would be a lot harder to replicate, but they are being replicated.
Wow. Well, that's scary. So it's a good thing we have you guys to make sure they're real for us.
That's right.
Yeah, and you mentioned alteration too. I never kind of heard of that until the last few years, but I understand that's a big issue too, where you have a card that's near mint, but it's got a little corner damage, so guys just trim a little bit off of the card to somebody who's not a professional might look at it and think it's a mint card, not realize that it's just a little smaller than it's supposed to be.
Yeah, trimming is definitely one of the biggest problems that we face with card alterations. But that's just one of many types of alterations that's done. And there's even cases of full-blown card restoration where a card is rounded off corners and the corners are rebuilt.
Wow.
We have cards that are actually conserved and basically rebuilt by companies who do artwork restoration.
Okay.
So there's all types of alterations we have to look for. It's color and being added to cards, trimming, of course, we mentioned. We're pressing out and removing creases and stains. The list goes on. So there's a lot of alterations that we really have to be aware of and know how to detect.
Wow, that's wild. Now for coins, you sometimes have a coin, say it's graded mint state 64, but it's the only one in that grade, the finest known. That might sell for tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you can go down a grade or two to, say, mint state 62, and it might just be a few $1,000s or something in that grade and be much less. So you get these top grades, and it's just an exponential jump in value. Is that the same thing with sports cards?
It is for sure. We're talking about the LeBron James card, and that was a hard card to get at all. To pull that card, we weren't going to find one in every box. The refractor versions were really hard to pull. But aside from that, it's also the condition. Those are tough to get in high grade. The populations, as the grades go up, the populations get smaller and smaller. And that is why you see some of these really big cards that have been sold here in the last 6 months to a year. These are really high grade cards, and they're hard to find in lower and higher grade. They are, some of them are easier to find in lower grade. Now, some of the sports cards that have broken some of these records are one of ones, but to your point, yes, the cards that are very condition sensitive, it's hard to get in a high grade. So you have some scarcity already with the card itself, but then to get that card in a gem mint or higher, it can be very difficult, and then hence the high price.
Right. So for using your example of that LeBron card that sold for $98,000 in your holder, like what's like a low grade, like base level for that card?
That card really it really varies. It's not a card you really even see sold raw. It's a card you're going to see in 9s or 10s, or 9s, 9, 5s, and 10s. And so it's really, the market's really set for the high grade.
Right, because it's such a recent card that there aren't that many. It's not like vintage cards where most of them are bent and creased. They're like, a low grade is probably at 7 or an 8 or something for a card like that.
That would be considered a low grade.
Right.
Yeah, right.
It's interesting. So in the early 1900s in coins, we refer to that era as the Renaissance of American coinage. Teddy Roosevelt hired the best artists to rejuvenate our coins and redesign them with some real artistry. Was there kind of an era in sports cards where, innovation and creativity kind of came in and took over? I know now I see these cards, you're showing refractors and thicker card stock, and maybe it's earlier and it's art, but what is there an era in sports cards where things kind of changed and it really took a different direction?
Sports cards are interesting. We've got not as a long history as coins, obviously, but we have a history going back to the 1800s. Mm-hmm. And these have always been marketed towards children. And yes, even in the cigarette card days.
Tobacco? Yeah.
Yeah. That's where there's many stories where kids would stand outside the stores in the 1909, 1910 era. They would stand outside the stores pestering men coming out of the store with cigarettes to give them the cigarette cards. So cards have always been marketed to children. And so there's always been that competition with who's making cards. The different manufacturers or different cigarette companies is always been a competition to the artwork, the style of the card, the look of the card, trying to always improve it and change it to keep kids interested. But really a good parallel to the coin world in the 1900s, turn of the century, to me would be the early 1990s for cards. 1989, Upper Deck entered into the baseball card world with at the time, a very innovative, high-tech design, very slick stock. They had a hologram on the cards. And then that's when cards kind of became serious, kind of high-tech. It's more than just your traditional Topps baseball card that many of us know from when we were growing up. And then shortly after that, in the early 90s, we started to see the manufacturers trying new things like autograph cards, where they would have the cards signed by the athlete and then they would place those in the pack. And memorabilia cards, where the cards actually had actual pieces of memorabilia like cut jerseys, cut pieces of patches, pieces of bats, and those would be embedded in the cards. And all that took place, really got started in the early 90s. That was kind of the I guess you would say a Renaissance period for cards.
Yeah, I kind of remember that's kind of right. When I was a kid, I was collecting in what you guys call the junk wax era.
That's right. Me too.
I started collecting cards. My earliest cards were kind of late 70s, early 80s, and like the years I bought the most of were like 87. I had like 6 Canseco's and 6 Wally Joyners and Bo Jackson, and so yeah, I remember I wasn't collecting as much in the early 90s, but I remember seeing those cards coming out and seeing they had the more glossy, it was a different look, different finish, and yeah, I'm amazed today now. I have some cards here that I'll open, but it's amazing, the cards I get with my kid now, and you got autographs and jerseys, and some of these cards are thick, and I'm amazed now that the packs are more expensive with less cards, but the quality is it's way different. It really has evolved in the last, say, 20, 30 years. It's really a different world. I got something
for sure.
fancy. Well, that's interesting. Look at this. I got like a Wade Boggs refractor or something in here. I don't know what that is. I didn't expect Wade Boggs in a 2021 pack of cards here. That's interesting.
What's interesting is that is a point you bring up there is the 2021 tops. There's a lot of what I call throwback or retro cards in their designs. This is the 70th anniversary of Topps cards, so they're including some former players, some legends, and some of their own card designs they've reprinted and inserted in packs. So it's part of why the boom in our market is from nostalgia. People of our generation, our age, are going back and buying the cards that we remembered. And so that kind of Topps is kind of playing into that. That's why you would see normally you'd never see Wade Boggs in a current product now, but that's
right.
One of the reasons.
Right. And then here's one that just in the same pack. This is actually, I got an autograph card in here. Dylan Carlson.
Nice.
I don't know him, but I don't know baseball as good as other sports, but it's like a refractor with an autograph.
Nice. Yeah, well, you can never go wrong with an autograph.
Very cool. I love the fact too that and we see this kind of with the U.S. Mint where they've kind of started listening to collectors and they try and limit the runs, and that's what happened when we were kids. With the junk. That's why it's now junk and not treasure wax. It's junk wax because the stuff from the 50s and 60s, people realized it was worth money, and the card companies had this huge demand because everybody wanted to buy cards and put them away because they thought they were going to retire on it. And the card companies, did not limit anything. They just kept printing. And now, it's literally like pennies on the dollar. I probably spent thousands of dollars mowing lawns as a teenager, and I sold, probably spent thousands on this stuff. I sold it a few years later for like $200. But it's nice to see and hear that, besides improving the artwork and putting these special features, that they're limiting this stuff. Like you said, some of these cards are one of one. They make one version of this card. I mean, to me, that's mind blowing. Like, I can't believe they make one of something.
That's a big part of it. And that's kind of the what some call the gambling aspect of opening packs now. Is you're taking a gamble. I think that's what you're looking for, these parallels, these one of ones or low serial numbered. Of course, the autographs and the memorabilia cards. But that's the thrill of the chase. That's the gamble. Everybody's going after. That's why you'll see unopened product current unopened product and product from just the last couple of years. Why it sells for so much money is it's that gambling aspect. That give an example like the LeBron James refractor. Buying any of those that you can get unopened, people are paying very high dollar in the off chance that they may pull a LeBron refractor. Right,
and it's interesting too. I see, I go to my card store and there's some packs that are brand new. This isn't even like old packs. Some of these packs are like $600 and like for a pack of like 6 cards. But I guess they're all super limited and they guarantee you're going to get a certain amount of autographs and all this stuff. But then going backwards to the vintage stuff, which I know you specialize more in vintage, but where do these highest graded cards come from? Are a lot of them from old collections that were kind of forgot or put away, or are a lot of them coming from these unopened boxes? Because I see in auctions and dealers' inventories, like you said, some of these boxes, you have a box of 86 Fleer basketball or whatever these rookie Jordan years or anything. You have an unopened box that's 20, 30 years old. They can go for huge money. Is that because a lot of these high-graded cards, are they still coming out of these boxes, or are they mostly coming out of collections, or where does this stuff come from?
Yeah, it depends on the era. Like you mentioned about the Jordans, the 80s cards like that. there are still cards in unopened material that's out there. With the Jordan's, a good example is even if you have unopened material and its origins, it's good stuff. The chances of pulling a high grade Jordan are not in your favor.
Right.
1986 Fleer, that not great quality control. They were more worried about getting them cut, putting in packs and sold.
Right.
So you're going to have issues with centering and other condition issues. So there are still some high grade ones out there in unopened wax, but there's also cards just like when we remember opening this stuff in the 80s. There's still a lot of problems in there too. But right. I do think cards like the Jordans, those are coming. Some of those are coming from unopened material that's still around. A lot of them seem to be coming from collections, especially the older you get. Unopened material is still out there into the back into the 50s. When we get into the 40s and before, it really dries up. There's not much in the way of unopened material, and those cards that come out that are in higher grade or really rare cards, new to the market cards, as I refer to them. Those are cards that come from collections that have just either they've been known about and kept through a family, or they're just recently discovered.
Uh-huh.
That's where we see cards. But we're starting to see cards like a Jordan rookie era type stuff that 20 years ago these cards weren't real high dollar, and so people collected them, put them away, they put them in the attic, forgot about them. And now we're going back and, hey, I may have that card, and I'm going back through a forgotten collection from when I was a kid, and people are discovering cards that, hey, I've got a Jordan rookie, and it's actually a really nice one.
Right.
So we're definitely seeing more of that for sure.
And it's interesting talking about, we talk about with coins, like, if you could have opened a bag back in 1900 of Morgan dollars or whatever, you might not get them in this high of condition. And just as an example, you're talking about opening a box, and looking for a Jordan rookie, and just because it's in an original box doesn't mean it's going to be a 9 or a 10. Like, this is a pack I just opened right now. This is a 2021 Topps pack that I opened while we're sitting here, and I got this. Who is this? Andrew Benintendi from the Red Sox, and I don't know if you can see this, but that corner is completely bent. It's like, it's got a crease.
Yep, it's got a
crease. I mean, and this is, I bought this pack like 2 hours ago on my way into the office just to do this today, and the thing is totally bent. So, the odds of a pack, even if it was in the box, you don't know how that box was handled. Somebody dropped it off a shelf or whatever. Or like you said, even just the quality control of the era, where they're just trying to pack this stuff as fast as they can. And I know, like, when we were kids too, the issue was, you got the card next to the gum, and it's got the gum stains on it, or the back of the wax pack, you got the wax stains. So many issues. So in coins, we talk a lot about the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., and they have the kind of most impressive coin collection in the world. They have these unique pieces of American history. It's unbelievable. Now, I know in baseball cards, there's something known as the Shoebox Treasures collection, which is at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. And I understand that you worked on this exhibit. Can you tell us a bit about this collection and your involvement?
Yeah, no, I was involved with that. I was a consultant on the Shoebox Treasure wing there at the National Baseball Hall of Fame. It was a great project. It was an honor, first off, to be involved and be asked to be involved in that. And the Hall of Fame, they always have had a card collection. Now, it's not a collection like the Smithsonian has of coins. Unfortunately, I wish it was. But they have some great cards. They own 2 T206 Honus Wagner cards.
Wow.
And so have some great cards. And years ago, they would just have a few cards out on display in a room that was kind of towards the end. If you follow through the Hall of Fame exhibits, it's kind of at the end. Oh, by the way, here's a wall of cards.
Right.
And so admittedly, they never really did a lot with it. It was just there. And so a few years back, they decided to take the cards out, maybe reimagine what we're doing with the cards, maybe present them a different way. And so during the time that they were gone, that was the most complaints they got of anything to do with Hall of Fame. Where are the baseball cards? Okay. I drove here with my son, my daughter. Where are the baseball cards? Uh-huh. And so the curators and directors and other people at the museum said, well, obviously this is important. Uh-huh. So they sat down and came up with Shoebox Treasures. And Shoebox Treasures, really, it's a celebration of the baseball card itself and its history and place in baseball history and American history. And so it's a really neat exhibit if you're a baseball fan or a card fan at all. It's of course, the Hall of Fame's worth visiting if you're a baseball fan at all. But it's a very interactive wing of the Hall of Fame where you can kind of walk through and see the baseball cards going back to the 1800s and the progression of the designs. And there's even a portion of the display about grading, the card prices, price guides that Dr. Beckett kind of got kick-started in the late 70s. And of course, then card grading. And they do have some great cards on display. There is a T206 Wagner on display. There's a 52 Topps Mantle on display and some real iconic cards that are on display that people can see actually very up close. It's a really neat display. But as far as like what's the greatest card club that's on display, unfortunately it's not at the Hall of Fame. Probably the at one time the most complete card collection would be the Jefferson Burdick collection, which is at the Met in New York City. And unfortunately, really from the get-go, it was never really appreciated for what it was. And when Jefferson Burdick was at the end of his life in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, he had kind of talked the Met into taking his collection at the time of several 100,000 cards. And they were just it was very unappreciated until really the 1990s. And unfortunately, some cards have been stolen over the years and whatnot. But even today, the collection's not on display. It's just, most of it's still in the original binders that he had actually used like stamp hinges to mount the cards in the album. So there are some cards on display, but very few. But that's probably the most famous card collection that's out there. That's at least some on display.
I remember reading a little bit about that collection, and it was kind of, I guess a while back, 10 or 20 years ago, they did have kind of a bigger group on display, and unfortunately I didn't read about it until after the fact. But I went and found the little Jefferson Burdick, the little book of, like, a lot of it, he wasn't even collecting just sports cards, right? He's collecting like any kind of ephemera and printed material, and it was just a massive, massive lifetime accumulation of stuff. But luckily, as people who like sports cards, he included a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he was not a baseball fan or a baseball card collector at all. He was a card collector, and his passion was cards, whether it was non-sports or if it was sports. And on the sports card side, we really owe a lot to Burdick because like we said, the T206 Honus Wagner, the T206 is the catalog designation that Jefferson Burdick came up with.
Oh, that's
so
what that
he
came from.
was responsible for cataloging these sets, identifying all these sets of baseball and non-sport cards going back to the 1800s, and assigning these sets numbers so they could be referenced. And what's interesting to note, the father of our hobby, as many call him, he despised the thought that cards would be of value. 50 cents here, a quarter there, when he would trade with other hobby pioneers, in the 30s and 40s. And we know this reading some correspondence between them. But he was not happy about the fact that people were willing to pay more for cards they couldn't get. Like the Honus Wagner card at the time was, when they got to $50, that was just it was appalling, So he was never for the making a business out of baseball cards or any cards. It was just about the pure hobby of it, So
right.
I've said before when discussing Burdick that we owe him a lot, but he's the man spinning in his grave right now.
It's wild to think, how much it's. So he was collecting in the 30s and 40s. Is that when he was collecting?
Yeah, he put together the first of his catalogs, the American Card catalog, and first one was issued in 1939, and then periodically he would do updates up until in the 50s, he did assign some basic.
Oh, he froze.
In cards would be the checklist. The 2021 tops card number 1, 2, 3, and he didn't actually do that. He just would say, 2021 tops has this number of cards, and the average card is worth this. So it's very basic on the cataloging.
Right. He doesn't want to tell you what that Honus Wagner's worth. He wants to buy it cheap.
That's right.
Is there any with the huge, just explosion in popularity of sports cards, is there any talk of the Met doing anything with his collection and putting stuff on display again? Have you heard anything?
Yeah, I have not. I mean, they are very aware of what they have now. They do appreciate and understand the collection now, but I think it's just a matter of resources. The way the collection is right now, the bulk of it can't be displayed. It has to be
conserved, probably stuck in these binders, right?
Yeah. So some of the key cards they've had on display, they'll rotate a display, but I think until somebody can back the resources for them and help out, I don't think anything's going to happen, in the near future.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I was going to say for the Met, it's probably a little lowbrow, but then again, the Met does a lot of cool things. I was there, I guess two summers ago when they had the display. What is it called? It Might Get Loud or something, and they had all these famous musicians' guitars and stuff, and it was really cool. So they definitely do appreciate pop art and things that are not necessarily the Picassos and fine art that you expect them to do. So it'd be interesting to see if they do something. I know there's a hunt collection of football cards that's an insane card collection too, that was at the Football Hall of Fame for a little while, which I'd love to see. I mainly collect football because that's what I played as a kid, but that's another crazy collection because I started getting back into it, and I start seeing that this guy's cards are always way better than mine, and I was like, who the heck is this Hunt? And I realized it's the Hunt, I forget his first name, who owns the Chiefs, and the Hunt brothers who cornered the silver market in the 70s. And those Hunts. Okay, it makes sense that he would have all of the finest ones.
Right.
So,
yeah, for sure.
So what are some of the highlights of the Shoebox Treasures that you worked with? I know you mentioned the T206 Honus Wagner, which has always been the holy grail. What else is in there that gets you excited?
For me, it's not necessarily the cards, but it's how they did the displays. It's a really cool part of the display. They have a 1950 Schwinn bicycle that's kind of mounted on the wall that you can reach over and turn the pedals, make the wheels go. And they actually have a baseball card clipped in the spoke, so you can actually hear what it sounded like. Which it's really cool.
It's not a 52 mantle or anything, right?
No.
Good.
No.
Okay, good.
Thank God it's not. But if you collected in the 60s and on up into the 80s, but especially in the 60s, Topps would do their Topps All-Star Rookie, and they'd have this little logo they would put on the card that was a little trophy.
Right.
And it was a little top hat with a little guy batting on top. And so they actually had, I believe it's Johnny Bench's. They actually used to award those trophies to the players, and so they actually have. I'm pretty sure it's Johnny Bench's, but they have it on display there in the Shoebox Treasures as well.
So the actual trophy with the card.
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't realize there was an actual trophy. I remember seeing those on the cards. I didn't realize that was actually that graphic was taken from a real trophy. I thought it was just something Topps came up with.
Yeah, there for a few years they actually made a trophy for it. So it's really neat. They have a lot of they delve into the photography of baseball cards, and they kind of go through that process. So to me, I love cards. I love everything about cards. Not necessarily a sports thing, but I'm kind of like Burdick. I love cards. I love how they're made and what's gone into the history of cards. And so some of those things like that, the photography and things like that's exciting to me.
And I totally get it. I can so relate, because being, a coin geek, I'm kind of a history geek. I never really enjoyed history that much in like school, but I've kind of backdoored my way into it just from loving these artifacts and looking at stuff. Then I want to know, the story and the history. And like I said, I've been kind of getting into football cards, so I love like, there's these guys I never heard of, and I don't even know if they're good players, but I'd love like 1888 Harry Beecher, I think, is the first football card. It was
That's
a set
considered the first football card, yeah.
Right, because there was, I think, a set of 30 or 40 cards of all different sports, mostly baseball, I guess, but there's, I think, billiards, boxing, bicycling, and there's just one football guy in there. And I don't know if he was any good. I think, who'd he play for, Princeton, or he was an Ivy League
it's a Yale player. Card.
Yale? Yeah, and then there's the Mayo. I know there's the cut plug Mayo, which is the first set, which is the 1894 maybe or so, I think.
Yeah. What's interesting with that set, there's a player, I believe I could be wrong. I think he's with Princeton, but he's actually related to Edgar Allan Poe.
Right.
His last name's Poe. And I think it's kind of a little bit of a distant relationship connection there, but it's just a little trivia about that set.
Yeah, I remember reading he's some kind of distant cousin, and then I guess there's one player, Dunlop, I think, that's the kind of holy grail that they forgot to put his name on the card.
Yeah, yep.
It's like some random. I think it took a long time for them to know. He was just called anonymous for years.
That's true. Yeah, it was for a long time. Just nobody figured out who it was for a long time.
So going back to that era, I know your specialty is that pre-World War II. When I was a kid collecting, again, we've already mentioned several times the T206 Honus Wagner. That's always been the holy grail. First, sports car to sell for over $1 million. And then kind of the next one along was, the Mantle rookies. I guess there's 52 tops and 50, what's Bowman, 51? Is Bowman a year before the tops?
It is, yeah. His actual rookie is 51 Bowman. The 52 tops, which is far more famous and more popular, is really a second-year card. But it is the 52 tops set itself is so iconic, and the Mantle card is the high series from the high number series, which has its own legend behind it. And I mean, just look at that image of Mick. It's just that card's got everything going for it.
Right.
Even though it's actually not a rookie.
No, it's interesting. You mentioned high numbers, and I hear people talk about that. Why are the high numbers important? What makes that different?
Well, previous to 1973, Topps would issue their baseball cards in series. So, you go to the store, you buy a pack of cards. It would only have cards 1 through whatever. And then Series 2 would pick that number up and continue. You'd have multiple series.
Okay.
And so the 52 Topps, their high numbers, they were issued at the very end of the season.
Okay.
They were hard to find. They weren't, at the time football had already started. They weren't very popular. And so the high series is kind of the cleanup series. That's where you'd find a lot of the rookies, guys who didn't, it's their first season. They just joined the team. So the photography didn't happen till later. And so, as one legend goes, that Topps had so many of these 52 high series left over, these cases of them, that Cy Berger had them put on a garbage barge and dumped into the ocean there outside of Brooklyn, which never been actually confirmed. But what is known is for sure that a lot of those did stick around a long time, and there have been stories of people had found 52 Topps high number cards in the 53 Topps and 54 Topps packs. And
oh, really?
We do know a lot were sent to Canada. They were dumped in Canada, and to this day, you'll still see 52 Topps high numbers surface in collections, that are very nice looking cards.
That's interesting. So basically, Topps is printing the cards. They start out with the all-stars and the big names, and then later in the year they make the other ones. So either the retailers either don't order them, or they already have the other box on the shelf, and kids already bought their cards for the year. They've kind of moved on, and these kind of got, became much more rare because there were just less of them out there.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting. So with that, though, these classic cards, Honus Wagner and Mantle, these were always the big holy grail cards, and I guess they still are. But recently we're seeing, in the top 10 highest prices for cards sold, we're seeing 4 or 5 modern cards, and by modern I mean the last 10 or 20 years, really modern cards selling for millions of dollars. What is going on here?
Well, like we touched on, the market in sports cards is been exploding now since about 2017 it started. But when the pandemic began, that really is when the sports card world exploded. We had the Last Dance documentary about Jordan.
Right.
That really helped kick it off.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of opinions and speculation as to why are we seeing this and what's causing it. And there's no one answer or even 3 answers. There's a lot of factors involved. Of course, there's more people at home. There's people with money, whether it was from government money or whatever, or working from home and can't go and spend the money they're making.
Right, or made a lot of money in the stock market.
Or made a lot of money in the stock market. I think that's one aspect that's fueled the market. I think another is we're seeing a lot of money coming into our hobby from outside the hobby that has not traditionally been there. People that have invested in like the art world, in other areas like that they've gotten into. They started branching out, looking at some of these other collectibles, and cards were there. And you've got a lot more interaction with athletes themselves.
Uh-huh.
Athletes more and more are talking about the cards. They're getting involved in the card market, not just buying cards, but investing in companies that are involved in the card market, auction houses and whatnot. So I think it's kind of a perfect storm that baseball cards are cool again. In the 80s, and my grandmother would always, when they had something about a Wagner card or something, she'd clip it from the newspaper. And when I go to her house, there'd be a stack of newspaper clippings about baseball cards, whatever made national news, And I think we're coming back to that, where now it's in the mainstream media. It's a cool thing to be involved in, baseball cards. Let's collect, and not just baseball cards, but sports cards in general. It's become a pop culture thing again.
Right. And also with, like we're doing here online. I mean, I think with social media and things, it's become huge. I mean, I've seen a lot of, as I started getting reinterested in it a bit, I started watching these videos of Gary Vee. You probably know who this guy is, Gary Vee,
yes.
Right? He's huge on the internet, social media, and he's just constantly sports card. Like, he loves this stuff. And, it really engages people because, people can interact with each other. Even like you said, you're stuck home during the pandemic, but it's a way that you can still kind of have a social component to your life and, have some fun with your hobby.
For sure.
Now, it's interesting, again, let's put that list up of the top 10 cards again. Let's see here. So we still got Mantle as number 1, although I think that's a pretty recent sale too, right? That $5.2 million Mantle, that's within the last few months,
It is.
right?
I think it was in January.
Yeah. But then we got Luka Doncic. I'm maybe mispronouncing. But that's a one-of-one card, right? That's a unique card, right?
Yes.
So that's, that makes a little sense, I guess, as much as I'm more lean towards the classics. You got Trout. You still got Honus Wagner there and Mickey Mantle right in the middle. You got 3 Wagners in there. You got number 4, number 6, and number 7 Honus Wagners. And then we get Giannis at 8, LeBron at 9, and Kobe at 10. These are all way over $1 million. I mean, the list probably goes to 20 or 30 now of $1 million cards, I would imagine.
Yeah.
The thing that I found interesting, because I thought, well, it's such a weird shift that now all of a sudden the modern is kind of taking over the throne from the classic. But you pointed out to me that most of these cards are sold in the last year or two, and part of this phenomenon we're seeing is just that's what's in the market. If there were more Honus Wagners and more 1952 Mantles coming out, we might see them retaking the throne here.
Yeah, I think that is part of it. I think that that these cards that we're looking at on this list is they're here. They're in the marketplace now. These are collectors and even though they're one of ones, there are a lot of different one of ones. So they're highly sought after, but there's enough to move around in the market and be sold. The Wagner card, there's close to 100 probably known, probably 70 to 80 or so, but there's just not many moving right now. And the people who have them, they're kind of holding on to them, watching what this market's doing. I think that when we do see another high grade 52 tops mantle or a Wagner come to market, it's gonna be something special, especially a Wagner. I think that the next big Wagner that comes along, I think is gonna be something really special.
And what's the highest grade Wagner is only what, like a 6 or 7 or something? Most of them are really low.
The highest
like
is an 8.
2, 3s. It's an 8. Okay.
Yeah,
that's like the card, right? They call it the card, right?
The card. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, that's the thing with that card is most are low grade. There's a 5 and a 6 out there, but most are 1s and 2s.
And was the card that particular Wagner? That was the one that Gretzky owned with Bruce McNall, isn't it? Do you know?
That's correct. Yeah, the one that's graded an 8. Yeah, the card.
And was that the first one that broke $1 million?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But the mantle that just broke the record for 5.2, that wasn't even a 10, right? Are there 10s of the 52 mantle?
There are. There's 3 10s out there, I believe is the number now. that are graded.
But this one that sold was a 9.5 or a 9?
It was a 9.
Okay, so it just goes to show,
which is mint.
Right. I mean, that's a mint card, but there, who knows what would a 10 bring?
Exactly. Yeah. If one of the 10s was to hit the market, that also would be in line, I think, with a big Wagner.
A new record, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's amazing. So with all this in mind, what do you kind of see as the future of sports cards?
Well, it's one thing people always ask me is, is this a bubble? Do you think this is a bubble, and what's going to happen? Well, first, I don't. I and no one else knows what's going to happen.
Right.
But I do know that I was around the first big boom in the 80s, and then the bust, and things are still growing. The market's still growing. The demand is still growing. The demand for third-party grading is just it's astronomical.
Right.
There's some of the companies that are out there that have long established, their backlogs in years now. It takes a year to get a card back.
Wow.
So it's definitely not slowing down. It's not peaked. I see it going. I see room for it to grow even more. Where it ultimately ends up, man. If I knew, you and I both would be rich.
Exactly. It's funny. I get that in coins. People, will this go up? If I buy this, what's it going to be worth in a few years? I'm like, anybody who tells you is lying. If I knew, if my crystal ball was working well, I'd be sitting on the beach sipping a drink right now.
That's right.
But I think it is, an interesting trend. I was talking to a friend of mine, and again, this is all a guess. My guess is, it can't go up the way it's going forever, for sure. I could see it softening a bit, but the new lows, if it softens a little, are still be multiples above what they were a year ago.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
So like I said, I'm buying. I got a Reggie Jackson and a Roberto Clemente that I just got for myself here.
Oh, nice. Yeah, there you go. So
I'm enjoying myself with this, and when I'm not busy with my nose in a book full of coins, So. Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna get some. We've been grading coins with NGC for a while. I know you guys have only been doing this about a month, but you're already kind of coming out the gate strong as the experts in the field, and competing with everybody, and just I know what NGC does, and I know who you are and who you guys are on your team. So I know you guys are the best of the best at what you do. So I'm looking forward to sending you in my application, and besides grading coins with you guys, I'm looking at sending all my sports cards here. So you're gonna get a submission very soon from me. I'm excited about that.
Awesome. I can't wait.
And remember, we sent you nachos, so I want good grades, all right? Don't be...
That's all it takes. All it takes is nachos.
That's all it is. That's all it takes. Then don't get your
I'm easy.
cheese, don't get your sour cream fingerprints on my cars, all right?
Oh, yeah. No, as soon as we're finished here, I'm going straight to have these things scrubbed. These hands got to be clean before I go in the room.
Well, I really appreciate your time here. Before we go, we're giving a $1,000 donation to St. Jude's Children's Hospital, which was the charity you chose. Why did you choose St. Jude's Children's Hospital?
It's just always had a special place in my heart. I have some people that I know that have had to have children there, and it's just it's always a special place in my heart.
Well, we appreciate it, and we're honored to be able to help such a good cause, and thank you for choosing that, and thank you so much for joining us again today. I look forward to maybe meeting you in person one day once this pandemic's over, and talking more about cards.
That'd be great, yeah, and thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody else, for joining me here today on Coin Snacks with Jack, even though today is Sports Cards and Snacks with Jack. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel. We're streaming every week on Facebook, every week on YouTube, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific. So tune in for your weekly dose of numismatics or maybe some other collectibles.
What was our lunch special again, Jack?
Our lunch special. Oh, yes. Thank you, Sofer. Don't forget our lunch special. Go over to our website, rarecollectiblestv.com. We have some great prices on our Hall of Fame baseball and Hall of Fame basketball coins that are autographed labels and all kinds of cool stuff. So don't forget to go over to our website for those great specials, up to 27% off on some of those.
I think that's $800 off for Jerry West.
Woo! That's a big one. Jerry West, Mr. Clutch.
Only 44.
All right, so don't forget to go to our website. Some great coins, great specials. We're streaming here every week, YouTube and Facebook, 3 Eastern, noon Pacific. We will see you next week for another exciting episode.
Thanks for watching Coin Snacks with Jack. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss an episode of Coin Snacks. Visit us at rarecollectiblestv.com.